Today is Monday, August 21st. What to know about the impact of the first tropical storm to hit Southern California in decades, and what other natural disaster has forced thousands from their homes in Washington. Also, we'll tell you what former President Trump has decided to do instead of showing up at the first Republican presidential debate this week. Plus, which country crashed their spacecraft into the moon? Which country won the Women's World Cup and why it was historic? And which movie won the weekend box office despite bringing in less than expected? Those stories and more news to know coming up. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. What was once Hurricane Hilary has now made landfall on the West Coast, bringing people in Southern California the kind of storm very few of them have ever seen before. Hilary hit the U.S. as a tropical storm after causing more damage in Mexico's Baja California peninsula as a hurricane. In parts of Southern California, it brought widespread rain, flooding, and downed trees, as well as road closures and power outages. Some areas got strong winds, too. For example, there was an 84-mile-an-hour wind gust measured in San Diego County. And of course, there was heavy rain. The storm already dumped several inches of rain in some mountain communities and threatened a year's worth of rain in inland desert areas. Certain communities did have to evacuate. But thankfully, there haven't been any reports of injuries or major damage in California, at least for now. Some people have had to be rescued from their cars after getting stuck in floodwaters, and even more flooding could be coming today. So with that, several school districts canceled classes, hundreds of flights have been canceled, some sporting events were rescheduled, and federal agencies sent more personnel and supplies into the area just in case they're needed. Today, the remnants of Hilary are expected to keep heading north and over the Rockies, though flooding could continue for days from Southern California to Montana as rainwater makes its way down mountainsides and into rivers and other waterways. With that, expected to be tough to get around much of the Southwest for today at least. Americans are now mourning the losses from even more catastrophic wildfires. These fires are burning in eastern Washington state, and at least 2 people have died. Dozens of homes have been destroyed, dozens of others have been damaged, and many more are still threatened. Thousands of people were ordered to evacuate. And at last check, Washington's Department of Natural Resources says the fires are still burning out of control and are 0% contained. The weather conditions should start to ease up a little, so firefighters have a better chance of getting a hold of these fires today. Meanwhile, in Maui, there's a long, difficult road to recovery still ahead, while people there in Hawaii deal with the aftermath of the deadliest wildfires in modern American history. At last check, search crews have gotten through about 85% of the fire zone. And so far, they've confirmed at least 114 people were killed. Hundreds more are still considered missing. While the search continues, President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden are scheduled to visit Maui today. The first Republican presidential debate of the 2024 campaign season is happening this week, but former President Trump will not be there. Trump confirmed on his Truth Social platform he plans to skip the first debate. News outlets like the New York Times and Washington Post say he decided to sit down for an online interview with former Fox News host Tucker Carlson instead. And apparently the plan is to air that interview at the same time as the debate on Fox this Wednesday. That's even though reports say the head of the Republican National Committee, as well as Fox News executives and personalities, have been trying to convince Trump, both publicly and privately, to show up. So who is going to be on the debate stage on Wednesday? So far, those who have qualified include Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, former Vice President Mike Pence, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, and more. And even though he won't actually be there, the other candidates are expected to talk about Trump quite a bit, either to defend him or criticize him. By the way, remember how we told you former President Trump was planning to release a report today that he said would prove the 2020 election was rigged? He also said it would clear him in the criminal case out of Georgia that accuses him of election interference. Well, Trump has since decided not to release that report. He says his lawyers would prefer to release all the information in legal filings instead. Still, Georgia's Republican governor, Brian Kemp, says he's not holding his breath since, as he put it, quote, for nearly 3 years now, anyone with evidence of fraud has failed to come forward under oath and prove anything in a court of law. It's not clear if or when the legal filings might actually come out, but we'll, of course, keep you updated. As expected, President Biden announced a historic new agreement with the leaders of Japan and South Korea. And together, the most powerful democracies in the Pacific made their strongest joint condemnation yet of what they called China's dangerous and aggressive behavior in the South China Sea. Now, in response, they promised to hold military training exercises every year and to set up a hotline so they can communicate better during crises and coordinate their responses. On the economy, the countries say they'll work on launching early warning systems for any possible supply chain disruptions in the future. And they agreed to meet in person each year. China has already denounced all of this cooperation, saying the countries are just taking the first steps to build a Pacific version of NATO. Though to be clear, there is no provision in this kind of alliance that would consider a military attack on one member an attack on all members, like NATO has. For now, the American, Japanese, and South Korean leaders say they just want to keep peace and maintain the status quo in Asia. Russia's first lunar mission in nearly 50 years ended in failure over the weekend. The country's robotic spacecraft crashed into the moon yesterday before trying to actually land. It's seen as a big setback to Russia's space ambitions. The Russia Space Agency is now investigating. The hope was for the spacecraft to land on the moon's south pole, which is thought to be rich in water ice that could help power missions to deep space. A mission from India is expected to make its own landing attempt in the region later this week. And future missions from the US, China, and others are also expected to target the area. So stay tuned. More news is coming up, but first, a quick break for our new sponsor, Honeylove. The reviews are in. Honeylove came out on top for Best Wedding Day Shapewear. With wedding season upon us, this is going to be so helpful for you. Whether you are a bride, a guest, or just want to upgrade your everyday look, Honeylove is your go-to for all things shapewear. In fact, our executive producer, Emily, did a ton of research and tried on a lot of shapewear before her wedding. And she told me she decided, hands down, Honeylove was the best. It was the one she wore on her wedding day. It was the only shapewear that helped her wedding dress hang just right instead of clinging like the other brands. And she felt and looked fantastic and confident. In fact, Honeylove has revolutionized compression technology, so you no longer have to feel like you're suffocating while wearing effective shapewear. It's why Honeylove has now become my go-to as well. And keep in mind, this was all even before Honeylove was our sponsor, so we are thrilled to be working with them now, especially because we get to share an exclusive offer with our listeners. Get 20% off your entire order with our exclusive link, honeylove.com/newsworthy. Treat yourself to the best shapewear on the market and save 20% off at honeylove.com/newsworthy. Again, use our exclusive link to get 20% off. That's honeylove.com/newsworthy. History was made at the Women's World Cup over the weekend. Spain beat England 1-0 to win the whole tournament for the very first time. Also, since Spain came into the tournament ranked 6th, it became the lowest ranked team to ever win a Women's World Cup. And it was the first time since 2011 that any country has won it besides the U.S. No matter who you were rooting for, the whole tournament broke records for attendance and TV viewing all over the world. It's still not clear which country will host the next Women's World Cup in 2027, but the U.S. is said to be in contention. Middle-aged Americans are now admitting to drinking and using recreational drugs more than ever before. A new study funded by the National Institutes of Health surveyed nearly 30,000 Americans. And it found nearly 30% of people aged 35 to 50 reported binge drinking last year, which means having 5 or more drinks in a row. That's the highest percentage ever recorded for that age group. Marijuana use also reached historic levels, with 28% of people in that age group reporting they get high from weed. The survey also looked at younger adults between 19 to 30 years old, and for that group, marijuana use was even higher, hitting historic levels. But binge drinking was actually way down as compared to just 10 years ago. So what can we take away from all of this? Well, experts say it's clear this kind of behavior is heavily influenced by the culture of a generation, and of course the legal status of different drugs at different periods in people's lives. A robo-taxi company that's been driving driverless all around San Francisco is now going to have to take half of its cars off the road. GM's Cruise agreed to cut its fleet just barely over a week after it was first allowed to operate at all hours of the day all over the city. But now authorities are investigating recent crashes. Just last week, one of the Cruise vehicles without a human driver stalled in an intersection, causing a crash with a fire truck. Another one drove into wet cement, and a third got hit by another driver who was apparently running a red light. This just adds to the growing debate over driverless cars. Supporters say they're innovative and make getting around cheaper and easier, but critics say they're dangerous and interfere with first responders. Cruise vehicles have driven more than 3 million autonomous miles in San Francisco in the first 7 months of this year alone. Now the company says it's going to work with regulators and city departments to make crashes less likely while its smaller fleet stays on the roads. A new DC superhero movie came out over the weekend, but unlike other big movies based on comic books, this one did not have the benefit of actors promoting it because they're on strike. And that may have actually made a difference at the box office. Blue Beetle brought in about $25.5 million on opening weekend, even though it cost more than $100 million to make. So this was not quite the huge blockbuster it was once expected to be. Still, it did make more money than any other movie at the box office over the weekend. Barbie came in at number 2 for the first time since it premiered, though it's still bringing in tens of millions of dollars in its 5th weekend. And soon, it's expected to overtake the Super Mario Bros. Movie as the biggest domestic release of the year. That's it for the main news, so now it's time for Money Monday, when we talk about one interesting money-related news story. But first, support for today's episode comes from AG1. AG1 is a foundational nutrition supplement that can replace your multivitamin and probiotic and really support whole body health. I had heard about AG1 before, but I can tell you that after actually trying it and making it part of my everyday, it has lived up to the hype. I drink AG1 in the morning, usually as I'm getting my toddler breakfast or starting my workday, before I've eaten anything else. And I notice I really do reach for my tea or coffee less often, or at least I forget about it for a while, because drinking AG1 makes me feel energized and ready to take on the day. I also appreciate that it's easy to put in a to-go cup on especially busy days, and that it's just this one simple drinkable habit. 1 scoop of AG1 mixed with water, that's it. It's one of the easiest habits I've started since it makes me feel good. If you are looking for a simpler, effective investment for your health, try AG1 and get 5 free AG1 travel packs and a free 1-year supply of vitamin D with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/newsworthy. That's drinkag1.com/newsworthy. Check it out. Okay, now back to Money Monday. It may still be back to school shopping season, but get ready to start seeing Christmas decor too. Yeah, the so-called Christmas creep is getting earlier and earlier. And it seems in some stores, holiday shopping starts now. For example, both Lowe's and Home Depot have already started selling Christmas-themed items like wreaths and trees, either online or in stores. And Costco has some Christmas merch next to Halloween items in some places. Axios reports more holiday sales announcements are expected soon. Why is this happening? Reports point to more online shopping and deals, for one, that we've seen ever since COVID hit in the last few years. Think Amazon, which will be holding a second big sale event in October this year, and other retailers who likely follow suit. But also, there's inflation. So retailers want to give shoppers a chance to spread out their spending. And one analyst told CNN stores may be running out of their summer inventory, so they need something to put on the floor. Experts are predicting this earlier holiday shopping season is here to stay, but that there is a limit to it, since consumers might not want to think about holiday items while heading to the beach. All right, thank you so much for listening today and every day. We'll be back with much more news to know tomorrow. For now, have a great day.